Bernie Sanders brags that he has not received any money from billionaires, and you can sort of understand why that would be a point in his favor in this primary. The View recently discussed this policy, and they did not all agree that that was a good thing.
So Bernie Sanders has boasted that he's the only candidate to not accept campaign donations from billionaires. But that policy is not going over too well with his competition. Well, he's the only one who's been able to really get this sort of like grassroots money coming towards him, $25, $10. The others can't. He's the only one who was able to pull it off, it seems, right? Who else has done that?
Money has been in politics for a really long time. Rich people have been sort of running the world and the world of politics for a really long time. It just is what it is, in my opinion. And since Citizens United, the Supreme Court basically said that a limit on money is a limit on free speech. And so there's just been so much money in politics. Yeah. I don't understand now why people are like, oh, now you've got these Democratic billionaires, spending so much money. It's not fair. It's just kind of been the way of the world for a really long time.
So I'm gonna admit up front that I don't watch The View very often, but the few times that I've seen a clip, I've seen Sonny go toe to toe with Meghan McCain and say things that make a lot of sense. That entire thing was it was the saddest political, just like fatalism. Yeah, the rich have always been in charge, so what are you gonna do? I don't know, something about it so that it doesn't continue for the rest of our lives? Bernie Sanders seems to have a plan, and we just talked, in the intro, they talked about how it's benefiting him in terms of grassroots support for his candidacy. So to respond with yeah, but they're powerful. I don't know. What are you gonna do?
This is what happens when only 11% of your country is participating in labor unions. Okay, our workforce has no infrastructure to make demands against capital. There are many different outcomes of this that we talk about quite frequently on this show as well. For example, productivity rates increasing tremendously over the course of the past 40 years, while wages have remained stagnant. And that is all the ongoing dynamic between capital and labor. Workers have certain interests, bosses have different interests, or owners of the business have different interests. And if they have all the money and they have a higher concentration of wealth and power and they can buy out politicians, then whose demands are people going to hear? Are they gonna hear the workers or are they gonna hear the bosses? They're of course going to hear the bosses. And it's unimaginable to them because they have no way, they have no history of fighting back against this in recent times. The last time we had any sort of serious grassroots uprising was Occupy Wall Street, which was largely vilified and turned into a spectacle by our, again, corporate media. So there is no infrastructure. We need to build that, which is part of the reason why I love Bernie Sanders, is because it's more so about a movement and not just electing a singular person into a position of power. And I think that's what's really important. No matter what happens, we need to have stronger unions in this country. We need to restore power back to the average citizens in this country. Black, white, yellow, gay, straight, doesn't matter, every single person. And we need to organize and we need to make demands and we need to ensure that our government finally starts working for us and not for the 1%.
So let me agree and disagree with that clip a little bit. First of all, I agree with their wonderful Christmas spirit. Man,
that set looked fun.
Yeah, that set was very Christmas. I liked it. I love Christmas. All right,
get some trees in here.
So now, kidding aside, let's get to the substance. First of all, they're right about the malady. The politics is drowning in money, and I'm not against billionaires per se, so I don't know if that means I disagree with Bernie on that. But Tom Steyer is not a guy that I'm going to vote for in this presidential primary, but he's done amazing work on fighting for the environment against climate change disaster that we're in. He's actually put a lot of money into grassroots progressive work. So if you have a billionaire who's putting money to empower people and to spread a progressive message. And by the way, during the run, he's constantly talking about how corporations rule our government and they have too much corporate power, and that is absolutely right. So I applaud that. I don't have any problem with that. I prefer Bernie Sanders as a candidate, but I think that Steyer is being helpful there. On the other hand, the real issue, as Sonny points out, but then gets too defeatist about, is it's not just 1 or 2 billionaires running for office. The much bigger problem is that we allow for wholesale auctions rather than elections. So people can give as much money as they want through dark money, through super PACs. Sheldon Adelson has bragged about putting $30 million into a candidate, $50 million to support a candidate. So this is absolutely unbelievably outrageous. The system is outrageous. The system is corrupt. But of course, the part I disagree with is you can't just throw your hands up and say there's nothing we could do. No, there's a lot you can do. You can organize, you can work together, and you can actually pass an amendment to solve this. That's what Wolfpack's trying to do, wolf-pack.com, okay? And so if you sit on your couch and accept defeat, you will have defeat. If you rise up, every generation of Americans has actually gone and made a giant difference. We've had amendments go in droves. They go in 3 to 4 blocks. They go one after another once amendments begin. Every generation says amendments are impossible, then they do 3 or 4 of them. Okay, so they give you that mythology so that you never fight back. Don't believe the hype. Go fight for an amendment to get money out of politics and publicly finance all elections right now.
And you mentioned 2 forms of ways that they can corrupt the process, and we're experiencing both literally right now. As we speak in Iowa and New Hampshire, Steyer to a lesser extent, but now Bloomberg to a much greater extent, they are running millions and millions of dollars worth of ads. And they might in the end get a couple of percentage points from it. Perhaps never before has as much money been spent to move a needle as little as it will be moved. And yet they can be taken seriously and they can make it onto the debate stage because of that. I agree, I like Steyer a lot more than Bloomberg, but I don't think that he got those donations organically. The way it was set up to make sure that people have a base of support, and we saw that you can game the system.
I don't know why people trust Steyer when he literally built the largest dono email list he could by creating the anti-Trump thing that he did and blasting ads even before, years before he ever said he was going to run for president. Back then I was like, this guy is going to run for president, and that's precisely why he's building this anti-Trump list so that he can hit them with the inevitable presidential nomination, and he can start building a grassroots backed billionaire candidacy. Look, if you feel sad, I just want you guys to remember one thing, okay? If you feel like things are looking really poorly, or things are looking really bad, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen.
Yeah, it's a great point about history. Look, on Steyer, I agree that him building that list through the so-called impeachment push was a bit cynical, to say the least. On the other hand, it did help push towards impeachment. I'll take the wins whenever I can get them. And then Bloomberg has been great in fighting for gun control. Now, having said that, all of this gets washed away. I don't think Steyer would ever do this, but with Bloomberg, I'm significantly concerned. All this gets washed away if all of this is a cynical attempt to set up a third party run, to pretend some sort of thaw grievance and go, well, if the Democratic Party had been fair to me, I would have backed Bernie Sanders. But since he's the nominee and he's so extremist and they were unfair to me, I guess I'm gonna have to run as a third party candidate, spend $1 billion in advertising, helping my friend Donald Trump so that he could win instead of Bernie and I could keep my tax cuts, which are way more than $1 billion. Hey, look at that, I made money again. If Bloomberg does that, he will be a villain for the ages.
Yeah, if he announces that, it's because he wants Donald Trump to have a second term. So he can put that in his Wikipedia entry at the end of the day if he wants. So the first way that they're manipulating the current primary is through all that advertising that's flooding the early states. But the second way is right now. So The View really liked Pete Buttigieg when he came on the show initially. I don't know if they still support him, but they did early on. Well, he just spent the last couple of days attending high dollar fundraisers in New York City. And so I wish that I could go on The View. I'm an online progressive, so it's never gonna happen. But I would ask them, why do you think that Wall Street was so happy to see Pete Buttigieg? He doesn't have any kind of record. It's not like they're saying, we know what you have accomplished and we think you're the man for the job. He's clearly making promises for the future. And what promises is he making that's making Manhattan millionaires and billionaires so excited to see him? Why is he spending 2 days there? He's not in Iowa, by the way. The money he's making in Manhattan is being used to run ads in Iowa, but he's not spending time in Iowa. So what is that about? If you're feeling fatalistic, well, wait until you have Pete Buttigieg as your nominee. Then you can lock in for no change for quite a while.
Yeah, and to me, the most important point is that whether it's a billionaire who is economically conservative like Bloomberg, just simply buying the government himself, or a number of billionaires and millionaires getting together and buying a Biden or a Buttigieg, really, what difference does it make? Biden told wealthy donors, I promise you nothing will fundamentally change. And if you're a millionaire or billionaire, you love that kind of talk. And that's, Biden made it very explicit because he's a poor politician. Buttigieg, on the other hand, gives you great, wonderful, hey, you know what I'll do? I'll tell you that nothing will fundamentally change in Norwegian. Okay, still the same message.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.